Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.
Today, we are stepping into the ring for what is arguably the intellectual heavyweight title fight of the 21st century.
And we are not talking about sports here. We're talking about the ultimate showdown, the great God debate.
That's right. In one corner, you have Christopher Hitchens, the legendary God Slayer, a man who wielded words like weapons.
And in the other, Rabbi David Wolpe, known as America's rabbi, a man of just immense faith and intellect.
It's a clash of two completely different operating systems for understanding reality. The central question is massive.
Is the universe a celestial dictatorship, ruled by a tyrant we should fear?
Or is it a place of infinite mystery that comes from a source of love?
Exactly. We're breaking down the transcript of a fiery live debate from the GBH Forum Network. Our mission here is to strip away the noise and see how these two giants tackle God, morality, and torque, well, whether religion poisons everything or saves us from despair.
It's a fascinating confrontation because they aren't just, throwing insults. They're dismantling each other's entire worldviews on free will, war, and the cosmos itself.
So let's just jump right in. The first thing that really struck me was they aren't even arguing about the same God.
That's a crucial observation. Rabbi Wolpe, he immediately tries to frame the debate by emphasizing humility.
Right.
He knows Hitchens is going to attack the whole man in the sky idea, so Wolpe pivots. He uses this really compelling toddler analogy.
The idea that a 2-year-old just can't possibly comprehend the life of an adult.
Exactly. A toddler doesn't get taxes or romance or, existential dread. They just lack the cognitive architecture.
And Wolpe argues the gap between us and God is, what, infinitely greater?
Infinitely greater. So his definition of God is essentially just the source of everything. He argues any definition more specific than that is actually kind of insulting to God.
It's like trying to cram the infinite into a tiny, finite human box. He's basically saying, the God you atheists don't believe in, I don't believe in that guy either.
It's a clever move, but Hitchens doesn't buy it. Before we get to his response, though, I just want to mention something for our listeners.
Oh, right. Kanaluma beyendisinez lurfina olunos ve biyentushunabazines, which just means if you like our channel, please subscribe and press the like button.
A good reminder. So how does the God Slayer respond to this plea for humility?
He absolutely refuses to play that game. Hitchens doesn't care about some abstract, infinite source. He attacks the concept of monotheism itself.
And this is his signature move.
Totally. He doesn't just argue God isn't real. He argues that the whole concept is undesirable. He flips the script.
Instead of asking, does God exist? He asks, do you really want God to exist?
He calls it a celestial dictatorship. He explicitly compares it to a celestial North Korea.
Wow. That is such a brutal image.
It is, but follow his logic. He says, imagine a leader you can never vote out. You can't leave the country. But it's worse. Because in a human dictatorship, you can at least have your own private thoughts. In this celestial dictatorship, the leader knows your thoughts while you sleep. He convicts you of thought crime.
So he sees it as the ultimate invasion of privacy, a terminus of unfreedom, I think he calls it.
Exactly. He asks the audience, essentially, why would you wish for this? He thinks we should be glad there's no evidence for it.
He even makes that joke about polytheism.
Right, the moving from gods in every stream and tree to just one God is progress. But only because it gets the number of tyrants closer to the true number, 0.
It's a powerful rhetorical maneuver. He shifts the ground from evidence to liberty. But okay, eventually they have to stop talking definitions and start talking about the universe itself.
And this is where the debate moves from philosophy to physics. Hitchens leans really heavily on science here. He references the physicist Lawrence Krauss.
The something from nothing argument.
Yes. Hitchens argues that the universe is just defined by massive, wasteful destruction. Stars exploding, galaxies colliding. It's a cosmic slaughterhouse out there.
If there's a designer, he seems incredibly wasteful and indifferent.
But Hitchens doesn't find that bleak. And that's the twist. He finds it beautiful.
Really? Yeah.
He quotes the idea that we are all stardust, literally made from the nuclear waste of exploding stars. He finds that idea, that we are evolved matter from the cosmos, so much more majestic than the story of a burning bush.
He's saying reality is cooler than myth.
Exactly. But Wolpe pushes back hard on this materialist view. He argues that science explains the how, gravity evolution, but it can't explain the why.
The meaning behind it all.
Precisely. Wolpe challenges Hitchens. If we're just synapses and stuff, how do we explain immaterial realities, like love or consciousness or the feeling of mystery itself?
You can't get meaning from just atoms colliding.
He even drops that statistic that something like 51 or 52% of scientists in the American Academy of Science believe in God.
Which is his way of saying that science and faith aren't mutually exclusive, but this friction, this atoms versus something more, leads them into what I think is the most technical part of the debate.
The trap of free will.
Yes, and Wolpe seems to be setting a very specific logical trap for Hitchens.
It felt like that.
It goes like this. If you're a pure materialist, like Hitchens, you believe the universe is governed strictly by the laws of physics, cause and effect.
Right. I drop a pen, gravity makes it fall, it has no choice.
Exactly. Now, if a human being is also just matter, then we are subject to those same laws. Our genes and our environment are the cause, and our actions are just the effect.
So in a purely material world, I'm not really choosing to speak right now. I'm just a biological robot executing a program.
That's the argument. Wolpe says that without a soul, something outside of physics, granted by God, you cannot have true free will. You're just a sophisticated rock rolling down a hill.
That's a tough corner to be painted into.
Yeah.
So how does Hitchens get out of it?
He escapes using evolutionary biology. He cites Stephen Jay Gould and the famous Burgess shale fossils.
Ah, right.
The study of these ancient fossils showed that evolution isn't a ladder climbing up to perfection. It's more like a bush. It branches randomly.
So if you rewound the tape of life
Yeah.
and played it again,
Humans probably wouldn't even exist. We are a happy accident of history, not some predetermined outcome. He uses randomness to break the chain of determinism.
the future isn't written.
Correct. And then he delivers this absolute classic paradoxical line. When asked about free will, he says, "Of course we have free will. We have no choice."
Such a Hitchens line. We are condemned to be free.
It's a brilliant witticism, but it also shows his belief that, look, whether or not the physics allows for it, we have to live as if we are free.
There was that funny moment, too, with the audience question about the Big Bang being a hiccup.
A hiccup in the space-time warp, yeah.
Yeah.
Hitchens just dismisses it. He says if you call the Big Bang a hiccup, you're just creating an infinite regression. Who made the hiccupper?
It solves nothing.
But Wolpe jumps on that same point and says, look, the fact that there is something rather than nothing, that is the fundamental mystery. For Wolpe, the hiccup is the miracle.
So we have a standoff on a universe. But what about how we act in it? This brings us to morality.
And this is where the gloves really came off, the goodness standoff.
Hitchens goes first. He challenges Wolpe. Name a wicked action performed precisely because of religious faith.
Like genital mutilation or suicide bombing.
That a non-believer wouldn't do. His point being that religion adds a specific motivation for cruelty. You don't see atheists crashing planes into buildings over a textual disagreement.
True. And Wolpe counters with his own challenge. Name a moral action that a believer performs that a non-believer could not physically perform.
Now, Wolpe admits a non-believer can be good, of course, but he argues religion provides a unique atmosphere of sanctity.
And this was a surprisingly personal, touching moment.
It was. He talks about his father, also a rabbi, blessing him on Friday nights. He says that specific act, that intimacy wrapped in ancient ritual, is something secularism can't replicate.
He calls it holiness.
Yeah.
It's not just I love you, it's I love you within a divine framework. It adds a texture and depth to life.
And Hitchens just waves that away. He dismisses it as an incantation.
Basically says, I can tell my children I love them without mumbling over them.
Yeah. He argues the golden rule is a human invention. We figured it out because we're social primates who have to live together, not because a burning bush told us to.
And this spills over into charity, too. Wolpe makes the point that religious people, statistically, give more to charity.
And Hitchens counters that religious charity often comes with strings attached. Proselytizing.
He champions secular groups like Doctors Without Borders. He says, they don't preach to the dying. They don't try to convert earthquake victims in Haiti.
It's the difference between doing good for goodness' sake versus for God's sake.
Which leads us directly into the darkest part of the conversation. Violence, war, and God on our side.
Wolpe tries to defend religion here. He says most wars are about land, resources, power, not theology. He cites the Encyclopedia of War.
And he points to the 20th century Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, atheist regimes that committed atrocities on a massive scale.
His argument is, if you remove God, you don't get peace. You get the gulag, people are violent, with or without religion.
But Hitchens has a counter theory that I think is so important. He calls religion a force multiplier.
This is a key concept. He admits tribalism is natural. We're primates. We fight over territory.
But he says religion makes those conflicts insoluble.
How so?
Well, look at Israel and Palestine. If a conflict is just about land, you can negotiate, you can draw a border.
It's a political problem with a political solution.
Right. But when you add religion, when both sides claim a divine mandate, that God says, this land is yours, you can't negotiate with God's will.
It turns a border dispute into a cosmic battle.
Exactly. That is the force multiplier. It raises the stakes to infinity. He also refuses to let religion off the hook for the Nazis. He points out their soldiers wore belt buckles saying, "Gott mit uns," God with us.
So on one side, Wolf says religion is a constraint on our violent nature. On the other, Hitchens says it's the fuel that keeps the fire burning forever.
Which brings us to the final and I think most personal part of the deep dive, the question of solace.
When things go wrong, when we face death, does truth matter more than comfort?
This is where their emotional temperaments really diverge. Walt makes a very compassionate argument. He talks about standing at the grave of a child.
Yeah, that was heavy.
He says in that moment, religion offers necessary meaning. It prevents nihilism. It creates a community that holds you up. He says it's not cheap consolation. It's a survival mechanism for the soul.
And Hitchens, man, he is just unyielding.
He is. He calls promising an afterlife lying to the dying.
That sounds incredibly harsh.
It is, but he sees it as a matter of dignity. Hitchens argues for irony and stoicism. He says, look, we are born into a losing struggle. We are mammals. We are going to die. Fact.
And facing that reality without illusion, without the false hope of heaven, is more dignified. He says, I spurn the gift of false comfort.
He wants to look the abyss in the eye, but then right at the end, there's this surprising moment of convergence.
The numinous.
Yes, Hitchens admits it. He says, I'm not a robot. He admits humans have this need for the numinous, that transcendent feeling you get from music or a landscape or love.
That feeling of awe.
Exactly. But the distinction is vital. Hitchens insists that feeling does not require the supernatural. You don't need a supervising deity to feel the grandeur of the universe.
Well, Wolpe, of course, sees that feeling as the fingerprint of God.
And that really sums up the standoff. Wolpe insists on the mystery and community of faith. Hitchens demands evidence, liberty, and the courage to face our losing struggle without illusion.
It leaves you with a lot to think about.
It does. And if you think about it, there's a provocative question that lingers after the debate ends.
What's that?
Well, if Hitchens is right, if we really are just evolved primates with no divine supervisor, no soul, does that make our achievements in art, love, and morality less significant? Or does it make them more impressive?
Whoa. That's a spin I hadn't considered.
Think about it. If we built cathedrals, wrote symphonies, and developed human rights all alone against the odds of a chaotic universe,
Yeah.
isn't that, in its own way, more miraculous than if we were just following instructions?
That is, yeah. That is going to keep me up tonight. We are out of time, but that is the perfect place to leave it. Thank you for listening to Thinking Deeper by 6-7,
Keep questioning.
and we'll see you on the next Deep Dive.